social unrest that was unkind to the free market economies. The special agents and economic hitmen were born and became the new, less visible means to maintain such control over the globe's resources.
If we don't like what a democratically elected leader of another country is doing, for example, opposing the exploitation of oil in his country, someone who looks like me will walk into that president's office. I had the job at one time. Walks into the office and says, and now I just want to remind you that I can make you and your family very, very rich if you play my game, our game. Or I can see to it that you're thrown out of office or assassinated if you decide to fulfill your campaign promises. And usually it's said a little more subtly than that because there may be a tape recorder listening. But they get the message because every one of those presidents knows what happened to Arbenz of Guatemala and Allende of Chile and Roldos of Ecuador and Lumumba of the Congo and Torrijos and on. The list is very long of presidents that we have had thrown out or assassinated. There's no question about that. And they all know this. So we perpetuate the system that way. Here you offer from this pocket, you offer a few $100 million, corruption. Or from this pocket, you offer subversives, jackals, to go in and overthrow the government or assassinate the president. And this has happened time and time and time again. Usually the economic hitmen are successful, so we don't need to send in the jackals. But on those occasions when we're not successful, as for me, I failed with Omar Torrijos in Panama and Jaime Roldos in Ecuador. And so the jackals were sent in and assassinated these men.
In fact, the CIA was the private army of the president being used for highly dubious, virtually invariably disastrous interventions in other people's countries, starting with the overthrow of the Iranian government in 1953 for the sake of the British Petroleum Company. We declared that the elected prime minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, was a communist. The Pope would have been a better candidate. That is to say, he was simply trying to regain some control over Iranian oil assets, and the British wanted him out and talked Eisenhower into doing the dirty work.
We did the same thing in Iraq under Qasem, who was a very popular president of Iraq and decided that he wanted to get more of the profits from Iraqi oil to go to the Iraqi people, not to the foreign companies. So we decided he had to go. He had to be assassinated. We sent an assassination team in the early 60s. It was headed by a young man at the time who failed and got wounded in the process and had to flee the country. That was Saddam Hussein. He was our hired assassin. He failed, so the CIA went in directly and had Qasem publicly executed on Iraqi television and put Saddam's family in power.
There is no question that over the years, the government has used its imperial apparatus for economic purposes, for the advantage of American firms. Perhaps the best examples are the United Fruit Company in Central America, and that is after the overthrow of the government of Guatemala in 1954 by brutal, very brutal means against a small and defenseless country. Over the years leading to civil war, police repression, at least 200,000 Guatemalan civilians have lost their lives. All of this was done because the United Fruit Company objected to some rather modest proposals for land reform. You could carry it on to the CIA's intervention against Allende in order to bring to power probably the most odious military dictator in the Cold War period, General Pinochet. Here the interests were primarily of IT&T Company. They participated closely, that is International Telephone and Telegraph, participated closely with the CIA in financing and funding and plotting the coup against Salvador Allende. Also equally in Chile, the mining interests of the big copper firms. One of the things that American imperial power has long been used in Latin America in order to protect the interest of extractive industries in very poor countries such as Bolivia and places of that sort.
On the very few instances when neither the economic hitmen nor the jackals are successful, then and only then do we send in the military. And this is what happened in Iraq. The economic hitmen were unable to bring Saddam Hussein around. The jackals were unable to take him out. He had very loyal guards, and he had look-alike doubles, so it was difficult to take him out. And so we sent in the military.
Iraq represents an instance of what I've called